Tell me, have you seen the yellow sign? The King in Yellow. It's a name that you may have already heard, perhaps associated with a robed fictional figure of mystery, perhaps in a video game or a television series, a tabletop RPG, or a strange book that you read but couldn't quite remember where it was from. The King in Yellow, a symbol, a sign, a strange concept that seemingly since its incarnation over a century ago appears time and time again in the even stranger corners of cosmic horror fiction. Although the genre as a whole has been passed from pillar to post throughout the ages, one of these mysterious figures appears to be far more fluid than any other, the King in Yellow. And now that we have the bravery to peek behind the lens, let's see if we can peel back those many layers and discover just exactly where the yellow sign leads. Hello horror fans, what's going on? And once again, welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, top 5 scary videos. As per usual, I'll be your horror host Jack Finch. As today, in our next entry of the lore explored, we cast our gaze toward the impossibly mysterious King in Yellow. Roll the clip.
I'll tell you about the Yellow King.
There it is again, that name, the Yellow King, another sign. For the curious amongst you, that scene was from the seminal season 1 of HBO's series True Detective, which is, for lack of a better term, bloody brilliant. I know I hark on about the series quite a lot, but really, season 1 of True Detective is one of the finest pieces of television ever created. That is not an overstatement, really, it's that good. But you might be thinking, hold on a minute Jack, what are you talking about? What does a modern day HBO series about Louisiana detectives have to do with the King in Yellow? You see, maybe it doesn't. But the point is, it poses a far more important question to be asked of us in this episode. Why do all of these writers seemingly feel compelled to illustrate the exact same entity? What is it about the Yellow King that has caused such a stir and sent so many ripples throughout the flat circle of time? And while it's an important point to note because this story has its fair share of twists and turns, that is going to be hard not to lose your head. But don't worry, we'll carefully read the tracks of this mysterious entity and hopefully not alert him of our presence. And whilst perhaps his first titular appearance is a good place to start in Robert W. Chambers' 1895 collection of short stories aptly named The King in Yellow, we have to first scale things back a few years earlier to 1893 and a writer by the name of Ambrose Bierce. You see, whilst H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe undoubtedly set the scene with their incarnations of cosmic horror and weird fiction, it could be argued that the bizarre works and the even more bizarre life of Ambrose Bierce lay the permafrost for the ensuing sanguination of horror in literature to come. Born in 1842 to Marcus Aurelius Bierce and Laura Sherwood Bierce, the father of the family in question had quite the air for alliteration. You see, Ambrose was the 10th of 13 children, each of them given their names beginning with the letter A. Abigail, Amelia, Anne, Addison, Aurelius, Augustus, Almeda, Andrew, Albert, Arthur, Adelia, Aurelia, and of course Ambrose himself. You see, this mortal reminder of language would be a caveat in his writing career, and his financially poor but incredibly literary parents instilled in young Ambrose a deep-seated love for books and writing. But it was later on in his life that Ambrose would forge his armory for horror fiction, and in turn lay the seeds for the King in Yellow to step into our world. You see, Ambrose Bierce drew the vast majority of his inspiration from his time as an infantryman in the American Civil War of 1861, but it was at the Battle of Shiloh of 1862 where the scene was truly set. A bloody battle and a terrifying experience in Bierce's life that would have a profound influence on his literary career and his later life as a war veteran. This theme was perhaps most perfectly captured in one of Bierce's most renowned short stories, An Inhabitant of Carcosa, a place which would become incredibly important to the King in Yellow, a story told as a weird tale first published in the San Francisco Newsletter of December 25th, 1886. It details a young soldier returned from the American Civil War who awakens in the ancient, far-forgotten city of Carcosa. But of course, though Bierce had a long and fruitful literary career, which ended with one of the most infamous disappearances in literary history, one which has never been solved, may I add, what we're concerned with is a later story written by Bierce, first published on January 24th, 1891 in Wave, a short story known as Heiter the Shepherd, and the first ever written document of the name Hastur, the entity that forms the basis of the King in Yellow in both cosmic horror and the later Cthulhu mythos. As Bierce would pen, in the heart of Heiter, the illusions of youth had not been supplanted by those of age and experience. His thoughts were pure and pleasant, for his life was simple and his soul devoid of ambition. He rose with the sun and went forth to pray at the shrine of Hastur, the god of shepherds, who heard and was pleased. You see, in this version, Hastur is a benign god, a benevolent entity that shepherds his flock on a strange and forgotten world. It was a theme that would embody the writings of Ambrose Bierce, a convention of men having no sway over their own destinies, even in the presence of an all-powerful god. Sound familiar? It would be a welcome reception then when in 1895, Bierce's contemporary, a man named Robert William Chambers, would take up the mantle of Hastur as well as the ancient forgotten city of Carcosa and attribute them to a new, far more cosmic kind of form. Chambers himself was a remarkable enough figure, particularly in the age of eccentrics so familiar with the birth of weird fiction. Although not exactly a household name, Chambers was a remarkable author, and although he never earned the posthumous acclaim that his later weird fiction prodigies would gather, Chambers laid the groundwork for the Yellow King and his great old brethren. His most renowned literary works, of course, is 1895's The King in Yellow, a book of 10 short stories first published by F. Tennyson Neely, fictionally set within the confines of a mysterious play. The King in Yellow, the vague veiled story of Casilda, Camilla and the Stranger, a play that perhaps has no final act, a play that, as explained by Chambers, is cursed. Now, although not all of the 10 stories are built around the mysterious King in Yellow, the image of this entity casts a long otherworldly shadow over the book. Characters explain throughout The King in Yellow that they themselves had attempted to read the play. Some of them are forever warned away from its strange cosmic allure, others are driven completely mad by it. As explained by the character of Castaigne in the first short story of the series, The Repairer of Reputations, I remember after finishing the first act that it occurred to me that I had better stop. I started up and flung the book into the fireplace. The volume struck the barred grate and fell open on the hearth in the firelight. If I had not caught a glimpse of the opening words in the second act, I should never have finished it, but as I stooped to pick it up, my eyes became riveted to the open page, and with a cry of terror, or perhaps it was of joy so poignant that I suffered in every nerve, I snatched the thing out of the coals and crept shaking to my bedroom, where I read and reread it and wept and laughed and trembled with a horror which at times assails me yet. Now that certainly sounds familiar, The King in Yellow, but perhaps the best demonstration of the mysterious figure in question is with the fourth story of the series, The Yellow Sign. As the two protagonists of the tale detail, after having read The King in Yellow play in its entirety, night fell and the hours dragged on, but still we murmured to each other of the King and the pallid mask, and midnight sounded from the misty spires in the fog-wrapped city. We spoke of Hastur and of Casilda, while outside the fog rolled against the blank window, panes as the cloud waves roll and break on the shores of Harley. Again, sound familiar? Or better still, does that seem familiar? Perhaps the strange yellow silhouette in the corner of your vision is getting clearer, but for Howard Phillips Lovecraft, Chambers' story and the many names that came with it would be the substance that he would huff and scatter out the scented visions of his seminal works of cosmic horror. Lovecraft noted that he first read Chambers' collection in January of 1927, where he collected the many names and titles laid out before him. The Lake of Harley, the Yellow Sign, Hastur, names and places that would later become commonplace in the Cthulhu mythos. You see, perhaps the most important spark of a synapse was that Lovecraft borrowed Chambers' method of vaguely referring to supernatural events, entities and places, which he in turn borrowed from Bierce, so on and so forth until the end of time. It's a flat circle. Effectively, all of these stories, Haita the Shepherd, an inhabitant of Carcosa, the King in Yellow, retroactively became another key component in the occult literature that formed the Cthulhu mythos. It was in Lovecraft's 1931 novella, The Whisperer in Darkness, where they were ultimately forged, where Lovecraft would link the yellow sign to that of Hastur, offering an illusion that Hastur was in fact an entity, a cosmic entity, a mystery of unfathomable scope, one that not even Lovecraft himself would attempt to fully form, and in turn pass it on to the future generations of weird fiction writers to try and comprehend, just like how it too had fallen into his lap. In 1938, a far more unlikely candidate would pick up the mantle, if only briefly, with Raymond Chandler's detective short story The King in Yellow, in which Philip Marlowe, or Steve Grace in earlier versions, finds a famous jazz trumpeter dead in his bed wearing yellow pajamas. As the detective finds the body, he mutters, "The King in Yellow, I read a book by that title once. Although only small and not connected to the Carcosa mythos in the slightest, you could argue that Raymond Chandler's use of the yellow sign perhaps exemplifies exactly what makes this incredibly unique literary anomaly so remarkably special. It's like a strange cosmic joke that has been muttered through the ages and no one yet has spilled the punchline. It also exemplifies why cosmic horror as a fictional vessel works so well. It's based upon pockets and deep-seated seams of hidden knowledge, unknowable mechanics that are left without explanation, sometimes for forever. An open-ended mystery, a yellow sign scrawled on the wall in a stray panel of a comic book series, a pallid mask in mise-en-scène hidden only to those that don't recognize it, the name of Carcosa on a map in the appendix of a graphic novel. Still to this day, Hastur and the yellow sign are the key components in the same transposed mystery that has crawled from page to page ever since Ambrose Bierce first penned reference to it in 1893. And that's where we arrive now. Well, in the last decade anyway, right back to our first clip, season 1 of True Detective, a work of fiction that seemingly would have no other reason to pick up the Yellow King than to further the mystery in itself. And now I'm certainly not in the business for even trying to attempt to spoil the contents of that series, because really, it needs to be seen. And well, if you're in the business of deciphering the next step in the age-old cosmic mystery of the King in Yellow, then it's certainly the next place that you'll have to look. Or well, take my word for it, it's definitely a place to start at least. The real question is though, what will be the next sign? What will be the next meaning of the yellow sign scrawled on a strange door down a dusty alleyway? Or perhaps an oddly familiar name in a video game, or the strange decoded lines in the lyrics of a song? We human beings are curious creatures, and the King in Yellow certainly knows it. Well, there we have it, horror fans, our latest entry in this Lore Explored series, and believe me, I enjoyed this one in particular. Well, what do you guys think? Do you have any other clues to offer in this age-old cosmic mystery, or just any words of wisdom of your own? Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But before we part from today's video, let's first take a quick look at some of your more creative comments from the last part of this Lore Explored series. Smack SBU says, "You guys really crushed it on this one. Historical context, lore, and great delivery. What a quality channel." Wow, Smack SBU, that's the nicest thing I think I've heard in a while. Thank you kindly, and I'm happy to deliver. Hopefully it's the same case with this one. Fingers crossed. And finally, Tanya Pillawook says, "I've always thought monsters and spirits created by indigenous people have been the warning stories of how their people should not behave. Thank you for an eclectic description of this myth. I am Inupiaq from Alaska and appreciate any who try to firmly describe tribal roots of indigenous legends." Well, Tanya, you know what, that actually means the world to me, and I'm incredibly glad that I could even remotely try and explain the incredible story of the Wendigo and give it the justice that it deserves, and hopefully highlight the importance of indigenous people and the knowledge that they keep. So thank you. Well, on that note, unfortunately that's all we've got time for in today's video. Just stick around all the way until the end. If you were a fan of this video, or just top 5 scary videos in general, then please be a dear and hit that thumbs up button, as well as that subscribe bell, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. As per usual, I've been your horror host Jack Finch. You've been watching top 5 scary videos, and until next time, you take it easy.